that is recording there.
We have students coming in.
There should be, one of them isn't coming, there should be at least one coming for real.
So mainly online for those students.
And it's not letting me do the,
I don't think students can do the live one. You can only upload those documents and manage the video files there.
so why did he tell me to use this then?
But this is when they told you to
No, the Canvas help desk.
Yeah, I never used this. When I searched for it, it did not show me any way that it can do live.
Hello? Well, I guess they can kind of see the screen. No, they won't be online because they can't get into it, can they? So I don't know whether to do this or whether to go back to the blue button.
Or maybe just video.
But I emailed them and told them I was going to do it in studio, so. Alright, let's get going. Okay. We turn off the light so we can see what we're doing here. All right. Hopefully you can hear this. Oh, that looks like you can. And I'm also recording this for YouTube because you guys can't join me live here, which is not what I asked for when I ran Canvas, so this is kind of frustrating. Okay. All right, so this week we are covering qualitative. Hello! Hurrah! We're covering qualitative, about which I know enough information to put on a pinhead. So there's a couple of things that we're going to do. I'm going to quickly flick through the PowerPoint from Dr. Berkey's old qualitative lecture when she worked here. And I will put the YouTube link up to that old lecture. Okay? There's just a couple of things that I want to highlight there to make sure that you pay attention to them when you watch that one. There should be a chapter from a different textbook in your course notes, so please let me know if you can't see it, on qualitative research. And so that will also be a good resource for you if you are reading qualitative articles. Okay? And then we're very lucky because Dr. Liu has agreed to come and talk to you for a little while about her dissertation study, which was qualitative in nature, mostly, totally.
Just one study is qualitative study.
Qualitative. So that will hopefully give you a feel for what qualitative study is really like. Okay? So I don't think if you're watching the studio recording that you can see the screen, but let's give it a go anyway. Okay, so basically all I know about qualitative is from sitting in here and listening to Dr. Berkey. So I'll try to point out some of the stuff that made sense to me at the time. So we've done some on quantitative work. Next week we'll be doing some more on quantitative. But some of the things that you want to look out for is that quantitative research is always done in an applied situation. So if you remember back to the beginning of the semester, we said that research that's done in a controlled environment, in a lab or something like that, is called basic research. And because of the field we're in, we're really interested in applied. And so qualitative is always done in applied. You don't have a basic version for this. Okay? So qualitative research is very descriptive. Again, we talked a little bit about the fact that if you are running a quantitative study, the data you collect is going to be numbers. If you run a qualitative study, the data you collect is going to be words, right? It's going to be sentences, it's going to be feelings, it's going to be opinions, okay? So the researchers in qualitative fields are much more interested in the process of the collection of the data than they are as much with the product or the results. So it's quite a different approach to how we think about quantitative work. Okay? And they analyze the data inductively. So what that means is they don't run a statistical analysis on the data. Okay? In the old days, you would literally have qualitative researchers who would write down sentences on bits of paper, lay them all out on the floor, and then try to group the bits of paper into cohesive groups of similar ideas. Right? Very long, laborious process. I believe, I've never seen it, but I believe that nowadays there's actually software that will do at least part of that work for you. So where we use a software package to run our statistical analysis now instead of doing it by hand, they've now got some software packages that will group these ideas together. Okay? The ideas are often called themes. Okay? So that's a word that you want to look out for if you're reading a qualitative paper. When you get to the part where they're talking about what they found, then they may say, okay, we group this into X number of themes, and then they'll give you the names of the themes that they think they found in the information that they collected. Okay, so they're really looking for the meaning, somebody's opinion, right? They want to know how people feel about, okay, so here's a great example. Over the summer they did yet another search for an athletic director, right? And when I saw the emails come through for the candidates, my first thought was, that's the third AD search in a row that does not have a female shortlisted as a candidate, right? So a qualitative researcher would be interested in knowing people's thoughts about the athletics director search process, right? I couldn't care less about that because I'm a numbers person, okay? So, but that's kind of the idea that you're looking for. So they define a problem, but in a qualitative, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Liu, in a qualitative paper, you're not going to see the purpose of this study was, because they don't define the purpose that clearly, okay? They have a research question that they're interested in, and then they will just dive in and start asking about that question, and sometimes they change tack partway through the study. So it's very, very different from a quantitative where we put a lot of work into the planning, right? Because we've got to look at limitations, we've got to look at the data collection, we've got to plan it very carefully, otherwise the data isn't valid, right? In a qualitative study, they don't do that. They just kind of jump right in and go for it. But then their results and their discussion, the other end of the study, way, way, way much more work than a quantitative. You chuck it into SPSS, it spews out the numbers, you describe what they mean, and bingo, you're done, right? So it's not that qualitative is easier or harder, but they're very, very different. Where the workload is in the study is different, right? Either at the beginning of the study or at the end of the study, but there's always a workload, right? You don't get to run a study without a lot of work, okay? Look for the framework, philosophical orientation, and the choice of interpretation. So you'll see, let me see, does she give me a word? What's the word? So it might be interview, it might be, oh, good grief. Thematic analysis is like the results section, not the orientation. Okay, I already said that bit. See, I told you I didn't know very much about this. Collecting the data, so they'll have to do some training with the people who are doing the interviewing, or running the surveys. I don't understand purposive sampling, I have to say, sorry. I think, I know one thing I remember she used to say that, so again, where we're very fussy about our participants, in a qualitative study, they can have a participant and then they can ask that participant to recommend someone else to be in the study.
That's a snowball strategy.
Snowball strategy, thank you. Yeah, that would never happen in my life, right? That's not, in my world, doesn't happen, okay? Okay, and I'll let you watch Dr. Berkey's lecture to explain this. Ethnography, you'll see often. So you can have case studies, you can have observation, you can have whatever that word is, I can't say that. Grounded theory is a type of methodology. So if you see grounded theory anywhere, then you want to, then that's your methodology, design, and visual, so video recording. Interviews, focus groups, observations, the difference between an interview is one-to-one. A focus group is where you have a group of people and they will bounce off each other and there's someone recording it or taking notes on it, and then they pull those sentences out of that. So you have to have 3 points of reference for qualitative data because they don't look at validating the data in the same way we do. Am I talking nonsense?
That's the trustworthiness and our
trustworthiness, and you'll go over that. Hurrah! Okay, good. I don't need to do that bit then. Hurrah, hurrah. There we go. Trustworthiness, 3 things. I don't know, whatever. And observations, transcripts. There's our themes thing. I don't know what this means. You'll have to watch the, sorry, trustworthiness. You'll have someone much better than me to do that, okay? All right, I do apologize, I'm really, really bad at qualitative stuff.
So I usually, I think I'm a quant person, but I glad I do a little bit of the qualitative steps.
You're a mixed methods person. Hopefully. Here we go.
So do I need the audio things as well? Or
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Just if that camera picks up really well just on its own, but this is picking up for
okay, so I'll have to look at this.
well, ish. Worry too much. I suspect we're not going to use this. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad we have someone.
I know. It's so hard to.
Because we need interaction with students.
It's so difficult to teach when the room is empty. Yeah, I appreciate making that time.
All right. I'll just wear it. I usually wear masks when I'm talking a lot. Sometimes I cannot breathe, but overall.
Yeah, I don't know how the cameras will pick up with that on, so.
Okay, so I can just wipe out a little bit. There you go. All right, so what's your name?
Sierra.
Can you say it again?
Sierra.
Sierra? Yeah, sometimes I cannot.
Sierra like the mountains.
Oh, Sierra, yeah. Good to have you. So yeah, I think Dr. Wood talked a lot about qualitative stuff already, with all the basic information and knowledge about how to conduct a qualitative study and what are the differences between qualitative study and quantitative study. So I hope you all can still have time to review all the information she provided. She put a lot of efforts in it, I think. But today I'm really happy to be here, and thanks Dr. Wood inviting me to share some of my work and some of my experience and knowledge about qualitative stuff. So hopefully it can be helpful and you can have some takeaways after this lesson today. So actually I have 3 studies for my dissertation when I was a PhD student. And this one is my 3rd study. That's a qualitative study. And my study 1 and 2 is all quantitative studies. And so this one is mainly, so this is my topic actually. So when you read this topic to see if you know what I'm looking for. So this qualitative study is about pre-service PE teachers, preparation for health-related fitness testing, and it's from faculty's perspective. So mainly is, so my research focuses on health-related fitness testing, and I want to see how our program, how the PT, physical education, teacher education program, prepare them for implementing health-related fitness testing in K-12 schools, K-12 PE programs. And that's my, my question of how they have been prepared right now in the teacher education program. And so it's actually from faculty's view, because I want to see how faculty members, perceive the current preparation. And you can also have, I actually want to expand the study from, faculty's view to the students' view, to see how their experience when they're in the program are well prepared or not. So that's my study, one of my study in my dissertation, and it's using qualitative research method. I'm glad I can share it actually. I never think I can share it. Yeah, I actually present it in Ship America, but it's online, it's posted. I can really not bring slides and share, but this is a really good opportunity. So I will mainly focus on these aspects. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but I will not talk about literature review things. I will not talk about the research finding, but I want to go over through the whole procedure, how you can conduct qualitative study by applying what you've learned right now. And I will talk about research question. As Dr. Wall said, we have research question for every study, not only for the qualitative study, but also for the quantitative study. So you can see from the research question, sometimes you can identify if this study uses a qualitative research method or quantitative research method. Just based on the research question, we'll identify that. And then I will talk about the methods part, basically about the procedure of how to recruit participants, how to collect data, how to analyze data, and how to ensure the trustworthiness for the qualitative research study. Hopefully it can give you a specific idea because now you have a lot of information, and I want to have this study give you an example so that you can get some idea of how can we really use qualitative research method to do some study. So that's all I will talk about. So actually, this is my research question. If you can read that, how do physical education, teacher education, faculty members perceive the role of PET programs, for example, the coursework in preparing the pre-service teachers for health-related fitness testing in K-12. Oh, this is a typo. In K-12 physical education programs. So this is my research question, and everything I do is trying to answer this question and trying to find out what it looks like and how, really about how question, how they have been prepared. So that's my research question, and it guides my research design, guide my data collection, so that's the research question I have. So my question for you all is, based on this question, you can see it's a quantitative study or qualitative study. I know you already know this is a qualitative study, but if you can read this type of research question, how, what? So this type of question are all qualitative research study. So the point here I want to make is, sometimes you might see, oh, should I use quantitative research method or qualitative research method? Really go back to your research question, because qualitative research methods answer the questions we start with what or how, because this is really specific and it really needs a lot of information to answer the question instead of, oh, does Dr. Liu is different from Dr. Wall? It's really quantitative because you can measure different aspects with data, right? But for those how, it's really based on the person's perspectives, their opinion, their experience. So as for this research question, we use qualitative research method to dig deep into their understanding and gain and make sense of this question. Okay, so that's just my tip to help you understand how you can decide which method you can use based on your research question. Right? So why qualitative methods? I think Dr. Wall already talked about that. So the main purpose of using qualitative research method is you are trying to interpret something happening in the world, and you want to explore what's going on out there regarding a certain topic, a phenomenon, or in a person's experience, for example. So the thing is, you are trying to make sense of, or to interpret a phenomenon through the experiences and understandings of the people being studied. So you are trying to know what's going on out there, and you want to have more information or deeper understanding of certain topic, and that's why you are trying to use qualitative research method. So there are those points here: interpret the phenomenon and establish understanding through a group of people's voice and their experiences. You will not be able to include everyone of that group for the qualitative study. So that's why the sample size of qualitative study is usually really small. Instead of a couple thousands or hundreds, you will only have like about 10 or 5 participants. And because you want to spend a lot of time in understanding each person's experience, so it will be very time consuming. So that's why the sample size is usually small. But that's the purpose of qualitative research method. Yeah, phenomenological approach.
You say that word like it's easy.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time practicing about it, actually. So this is just one type of qualitative research methods. So qualitative research methods has a lot of different types of approach, like case study, or like other, I forgot the words, like Dr. Wah had the slides listed about approach, but this is just one of the approach. And I am good at this one, but not others. So that's why I'm sure my qualitative study only as one of the example of qualitative research methods. You might see different one from others, but this is how it goes with phenomenological approach. So if you can just look at the word phenomenological, it's actually about the phenomenon. You're trying to understand a phenomenon out there. Things are happening there, but you're trying to know what's going on there. why is that, how it looks like. So it describes the common meaning for several individuals of their lived experiences of a phenomenon. Okay? So as you can remember, my study is about their preparation for health-related fitness testing. It's happened there, right? So that's a phenomenon out there. And I want to know how they are really prepared. So that's a common meaning of many teacher education programs. And it can apply for many teacher education programs based on my finding. So that's why I use the phenomenological approach. And when you're trying to do phenomenological approach for your qualitative research study, there are some things you need to consider. First, the sample size. So usually 5 to 25 participants can be enough. You do not have to recruit 30 or 40 participants for a qualitative study, or especially when you're using a phenomenological approach. 5 to 25 participants can be enough. Okay. And for data collection, there are many ways you can do for qualitative study. Interview, that's a really common way we use to understand people's experience and their perspectives. Sometimes you might do focus group interview. You have a group of people, students, like 10 or 5. You interview them together. It's kind of like a discussion. You ask the same question and everyone can trigger an answer. It's kind of like a discussion, focus group interview. And you might do semi-structured interview. That's kind of like one-to-one, in-person, like personal interview. It's really deep, and you can ask a question, and the people will answer it. That's just for one-to-one setting. And you can also do observation and do field notes. You can also do questionnaire. You can include open-ended questions. If you want to understand their perspective, you can still ask them to write down. You can do questionnaire as well. And as for data analysis, for this approach, we usually call it as a horizontalization method. So it's kind of like you transcribe the interview data, you transcribe all the data you have, you do open coding, you code in all the data you have to see if you can find the common themes you have, and then you can generate these, and the themes are the findings of your study. And I will talk about a specific example, how it looks like. This is just a general idea of the phenomenological approach. And every time when we're trying to conduct a qualitative study, we need to consider the researcher's positionality. So the terminology of positionality is you have to understand you as a researcher in a specific topic to reduce subjective bias. For example, I am an Asian, I am female, so my view might be different from others. So when I interpret data, I have to consider my positionality, my identity, experience, and or knowledge about this topic, because sometimes I might make this different results or findings, or it might be different from Dr. Wall's interpreting of the data. So we need to avoid this kind of bias by really taking our own identity or experience into consideration when interpreting the data. And last is trustworthiness. That should be ensured for all qualitative research methods, not only for phenomenological. So trustworthiness is, there are many ways you can do to ensure that. Data triangulation, member checking, peer debriefing, or you can use other methods like journaling. So the data triangulation, the main idea is you have to have multiple data sources. You cannot only just have one interview data. That's not enough. You have to have other data sources to support or to triangulate the interview data, so that you can say, oh yeah, they are all consistent, and I can sure the participants tell the correct thing or something. That's the purpose of data triangulation. And for member checking, so usually you will send the finding or the results, the things you have, send it back to the participants to let them check that, to see, oh, do I have that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the findings I found or the results I interpreted accurate or consistent with your thoughts like that. So that's the way how member checking looks like. And you can also do peer debriefing. So usually for a study, we will use 3 methods to ensure the trustworthiness. and you have to write it down, include it in the methods part in the paper. So peer debriefing is, for example, I conduct a qualitative study, and I will ask Dr. Wall to help me peer debrief the research findings. It's very similar to member checking, but because Dr. Wall is my peer, and I invited her to read all the results I have, read all the codings I have to ensure all this is accurate. Or this is that's the correct findings I have. So that's basically how you do the methods to ensure the trustworthiness. And it's really important. I think that's core in qualitative research, because that's actually the same thing, like validity, reliability in quantitative stuff. So we always have to ensure the trustworthiness when doing qualitative research methods. Okay. So that's the general idea of how phenomenological approach looks like, and how when you are trying to implement a qualitative research method, you have to consider all those different aspects. Okay. Any questions?
I'm just listening.
Okay, good. Yeah, whenever you have a question, feel free to jump in.
Okay.
Yeah, then I've already given you some idea of qualitative research method and the phenomenological approach. Then go back to my study. So how I use the phenomenological approach to explore that research question. So to explore how the current pre-service PE teachers really be prepared with health-related fitness testing in teacher education programs. That's the thing I will show you how I did that. So for the participants, I have that question, and then I try to recruit participants. I use the purposive sampling strategy. So I have 7 PET, physical education, teacher education faculty from 5 different programs in Texas participated in this study. So why purposive sampling? So if you can understand purpose, because you do something intentionally, right? So the purposive sampling here, because the programs in Texas, the fitness program is mandatory in Texas, and because some of the states do not have any mandatory fitness testing program, and then the program might be completely different. If they might do not have certain coursework or experience in the teacher education program to prepare them for that, because they do not need it in K-12 program. So that's why I explored that in Texas, because I think they will give me a lot of information because they need it and they will do it. So that's why I select the programs in Texas for this study, and that's why the purposive sampling strategy used. Yeah. And then when you're trying to select participants for qualitative research method, there are many things, demographic aspects we need to consider for the participants. We have to have a mix of people with different experience, different background. We have to consider the gender, race, years of teaching. This is my study, years of teaching. And so for my study, I also consider the institution classifications because I cannot only recruit faculty from those research institutions. I also have to recruit them from those teaching institutions to cover all those different experience in the program. So I have R1, R2, R3, M1, M2, and M3. So those participants are from these different programs with different classifications. And I have males and females participants. I have Asian Americans, Caucasian. I have and also Hispanic. And so I have a lot of participants from different backgrounds. So from this way, we can include everyone's voice regarding this experience. We cannot only just include the males, or we cannot not just only include a specific group from a specific cultural background. So that's the thing we have to consider when we're trying to recruit participants, so that we can cover everyone's understanding and experience regarding this issue. Okay. So that's about the recruitment and the participants. And then let's go to data collection. So I have different sources of data. As you know, it's for triangulation purposes. So I have a pre-interview survey. So that's all actually about their demographic information. They're actually also asked for some information about their program their coursework. So these all can be done in the questionnaire setting, but I do it online. So I distribute online on paper and pencil-based. And I also, after I obtain that information, then I have a semi-structured interview. So I set up interview with everyone. I interview each of them by Zoom. So I ask a lot of questions, and they answer the questions, and I only record it just for my data transcribe purpose. So the semi-structured interview, again, you have those pre-constructed interview questions, and you are open to have follow-up questions. So that's why semi-structured interview set up. And I also ask for those documents. Can you send me a syllabi of your class? Can you send me any assignment handouts or slides that I can look at so that I can transcribe, triangulate those, the information, but take it from interview. So actually, all those data sources is for triangulation purpose for the interview data, because I cannot just only have one one interview data. I have to have some other evidence to prove that, oh, yeah, that's the thing you talk about in the interview. So that's all for the data triangulation purposes. And then I also have a follow-up survey. Yes?
So, if it hadn't been COVID time, would you have traveled and videoed them teaching their classes?
That's a really good point, because I collected data during COVID-19 2020, and so it's all different. So if I can travel there, if it's not COVID setting, I will travel there and observe their teaching. Right. So I will do the observation to see how they really talk about it, how they really implement or teach their pre-service PE teachers to do this, to implement health-related fitness testing. But things it's all online, and I cannot do that. So that's the only thing I can do for that part. But that's a really good point. Then when I have the results, when I have the findings, then I send a follow-up survey to those participants. So the main purpose for that is for member checking. So I will say, oh, can you check those results? Do you have different opinions of that or not? So basically just help me double check the accuracy of the finding based on their interview data and other data sources.
Just to kind of check that you've interpreted what they said correctly.
Yes, and that's often actually the themes after I code it. So yeah, that's what I did for my study. I hope it makes sense. Yeah, and that's actually the framework I have. So usually when you're trying to develop interview questions, you have to have some sort of theoretical framework to guide the development of interview questions. So I actually borrowed the idea from Gorrich. This researcher has some idea about preparation for technology. So they proposed a 4-phase approach to prepare students for using technology. So I kind of like based on this approach. So this is 4 phases, and then I have it for the how they are prepared for health-related fitness testing. So this is all the research questions are developed based on these 4 phases approach. So that's for the interview. That's the interview questions. But that's not only the 4 questions I asked during the interview, because here's some really good points. I will follow up that. So I will ask a lot of follow-up questions based on that.
So this is the structured bit.
Yes.
And then you can go wherever they lead you once you get going.
Yeah, because you want more information, more things, just not just only based on this, but it will give you a lot of other opinions or experience that you can follow up that. You will have a lot of different perspectives based on these questions, but you can also ask follow-up questions. And that's why semi-structured interview looks like. And then I have the data, I have to analyze the data, and the first thing I did is I transcribed all the interview data. So I already recorded, and I spent a lot of money to transcribe the interview data into words, so that it can help for me to do the open coding process. So after I have those transcribes, then I analyze all other data sources and to open coding. So the main thing or main point points of open coding is you have to really go over through all the data you have, and then you kind of like highlight those sentences, statements, quotes that you think can contribute to the understanding of your research question. And then, based on all those codings, you can generate the same, or with the categories, different categories of description. And that's the themes.
I remember watching a group and they had different color highlighters.
Yes, that's
And
what
so they would, if they would read something and they would highlight it green or pink or
Yes.
blue, depending on which,
like theme,
which
category. Yes,
which
that's the
category
way.
it went to.
Yeah, that's the way we usually do open coding. You just use different color. It would be much easier for you to categorize those information to different themes. And that's the things that's your finding actually regarding that research question. Yeah, so that's basically the thing you have to do when you are trying to analyze those qualitative research data. Okay. Yeah, and then in my study, I also talk about my positionality. So this section usually they're not included in the manuscripts. When you're trying to publish it, you will not include this part in that. But you have to consider about your own experience, like I mentioned at the very beginning. You have to consider your own experience, belief, and identity, because that might affect your interpretation of the data. So my view, your view might be different, because we have different experience, right? So we always have to consider that in order to minimize the effect of personal subjectivities of the study. Okay? But you do not have to include this part of the writing things. And this is the last, so trustworthiness, again, is a very important part of doing qualitative research. Data triangulation, so that's the 3 ways I used to ensure the trustworthiness. Data triangulation, I have interview data, documents, and survey data. I also did peer debriefing. I invited one of my colleagues in my previous program, so she helped me read or go over through all the codings and themes to ensure that's the same ideas she has. That's the same ideas as mine. And I also did memory checking, so I sent the themes, the findings back to the participants through an online survey to let them have different comments and perspective, opinions regarding the findings I have to ensure the accuracy and consistency. Yeah, so usually we will do these 3 methods, but there are also others. Sometimes researchers might do a log or journal when they're trying to interpret data to keep them like that's the thing I found at that moment to double check the results. So there are different ways you can check the information you might have on chapters. There are a lot more information in the chapter, but usually we will do these 3 different methods to ensure the trustworthiness. That's it. That's all I did for my study, and all the procedures. I hope it can make sense how qualitative study looks like. And if you're interested, these are some textbook I used when I'm trying to do the qualitative research method. And I think there are many more information out there, so hopefully it can be helpful with this specific example.
Yeah, and if you've done your reading, if you haven't done your reading, do it, because there's a chapter in our textbook, and then, as I said, I've got another, hopefully let me know if you can't see it, there should be a chapter from a different textbook up there as well, going into some more details. So that's a brief overview of qualitative research. As I said, it's not that one is easier than the other.
Just for different purposes,
yeah.
Different research questions.
Different, and when you're thinking about your purpose questions that you're trying to create, it's really important that you don't go into that saying, oh, I want to do a quantitative, or I want to do a qualitative. That's not the first question. The first question is, what am I interested in? What's my question? Once we have the question, then we decide whether or not it's quantitative or qualitative. Okay? And that's important to bear in mind, because otherwise you get off track with what your real question is. Yeah, and it's not, as I said, it's not that one's easier than the other, they're just very, very different. The workload is in a different part of the study. Like this highlighting these bits of paper that are spread all over the floor, that's a ludicrous amount of work. Right?
Yeah, but I know there are like some sort of software to analyze the coding things, like and people, but I never used that.
Yeah, no, there is apparently software available that can help with that now, but I've not ever seen it or spoken to anyone that's used it, so all I remember, I just have this very vivid memory of people with different highlighters doing it. It's just like, oh good lord. No. So, okay, I do apologize. I'm sure that there were several students trying to dial in live this evening, and yeah, what can I say? This whole campus trip is really...
Oh, well, I'll talk to you after class.
Okay.
You want to leave earlier? I can go right now.
The whole campus thing is just very difficult to manage. So I'm on a very steep learning curve and apparently not doing that well. So I do apologize. I will make sure that this video is up on YouTube straight away. I can get that downloaded and up on YouTube, and that's qualitative. Next week we'll do quantitative and I'll be back in my comfort zone and we'll be fine. Okay? Yes. Okay, thank you. Have a lovely evening, everybody. And weekend. Oh yeah, it's coming up for the weekend. All right, let's turn this one off.